Safi, karibu tena mtazamaji, hapa ni Bonita Media na kama kawaida kwa majina naitwa Boniface Owino. Sasa jana kumekuwa na debate kati ya Raila Odinga kati ya candidates wa AU position. Walizungumza, singependa nizungumze sana, ningependa tu nikuchezee video zao angalau usikie mazungumzo yao, jinsi ambavyo walikuwa wanauliza maswali na wanajibu hapa na pale. Jinsi ambavyo Yusuf alikuwa anajibu maswali. Unajua sasa hivi baadhi ya Wakenya wanasema kwamba wanaenda wanamsupport Yusuf kwa sababu Raila betrayer. Raila betray Kenyans, betray Gen Z, betray betray tribes mingi, betray mpaka Wajaluo, vitu kama hivyo, mpaka Wakikuyu, so hawana imani naye. Lakini mimi ningependa kusema kwamba tusiangalie kwamba watu wanaweza kusema kwamba pengine mbona tunamtetea Raila Odinga. Mimi simtetei Raila Odinga, bali nijaribu kuangalia tu kwamba kwenda kwa Raila AU position itakuwa nzuri sana kwa Wakenya, haswa kwa wale viongozi wadogo kwa sababu watapata nafasi, watakuwa na fursa ya kujikuza wenyewe. Unajua Raila akiwa hapa hakuna kitu ambacho unaweza ukakifanya. Lakini akiwa kule nje itakuwa virahisi kwa viongozi kama kina Babu Owino, kina Edwin Sifuna, kina Caleb Amisi, watu kama hao na wengi kuangalau kukuwa na sauti, kukuwa na voice na kuzungumza na watu kusikiza yale mambo ambayo wanayasema. Sasa mjadala ya jana ilikuwa hivi. Na ningependa nikuchezee hizo video angalau nawe pia usikize jinsi ambavyo yalikuwa yanaendelea hapa na pale. Raila akijaribu kuulizwa maswali akisema kwamba yeye ni Pan Africanist, amezaliwa Kenya lakini ametoka kule upande wa Sudan. Nyanyake alikuwa wa Sudan, mambo kama hayo, na ni grandfather wa mtoto mmoja. Alafu baadaye pia akasema kwamba ana mke mmoja ambaye anamjua, ambaye anajulikana, tunajua kwamba ni Aida Odinga, na kuna mambo mengi sana ambayo aliyazungumzia. Ningependa tu usikie jinsi ambavyo alizungumza na kisha baadaye tukutane kwenye video ambayo inafuata ikiwezekana. Nimekuwa wako Boniface Owino. Tazama.
I yield the microphone to you, Excellency Raila Odinga. 4 minutes, sir.
Well, we know where we are as African Union, and that's why the heads of state came up with that committee on reforms, which was headed by former president, current Rwanda President Kagame. The chairmanship has now been passed over to Honorable William Ruto, President of Kenya. I have had long discussions with President Kagame when he was chairing that committee, because I was working as a high representative of the AU on issues of infrastructure. And I know the kind of frustrations that you feel working that way. I know that 93% of the resolutions that are passed by the heads of state at the assembly are never implemented. Now there's some of them are resolutions which were probably not necessary. Some of them are not implementable, but majority of them are just not implemented. Some have to do with the structure and management of the AU at the headquarters. I'm not trying to pass any judgment here because I know that Mr. Paki has worked very hard to try to make the organization move forward. The other one has been the issue of funding, which has been a major challenge, and look at other alternative sources of funding. When I was there as high rep on infrastructure development, we came up with a proposal to set up an infrastructure fund for Africa, and using the African resources, because many of African countries have got a lot of money in sovereign funds, from which the AU can actually borrow without having to pay so much high interest. And this will help AU actually to spearhead the process of constructing some of these infrastructures. I mentioned the Trans-African Railway network, Lagos to Cairo, the high speed. Then you have got Beira in in Mozambique to Lobito in Angola and Walvis Bay in Namibia. Then you have got the Lapset, which will come from Lamu in Kenya, running through South Sudan, Central Africa to Caribbean Cameroon, to create a land bridge that opens the interior of Africa and gives these landlocked countries in the continent access to the sea. So some of these are possible, but we need to think out of the box and ensure that most of these reforms which are being proposed are implemented. We were talking about energy, which is a very major issue, and we have got the Grand Inga in the Congo, which can actually power the entire continent with power pools, southern power pool, eastern power pool, central, western, and northern power pool. That will help us to lower the cost of energy in the continent. That would be a revolutionary change on the continent. Then you've got the connectivity, fiber optic connectivity, open skies, opening up the skies for movement of people, and then visas. To do visas are a big issue. Many African businessmen cannot travel across the continent without, because they don't have visas.
Reforms in 2017, and then the champion for those reforms was His Excellency President Kagame, and he passed the responsibility to President Ruto. Now, there are a number of reforms that have already been implemented. We have to recognize that. The size of the commission, we had 10 commissioners, chairperson, deputy chairperson, and 8 commissioners, and it has been reduced. We have what we call a golden rule in terms of managing the staff and the personnel. I'm still waiting for the SACA program to be implemented. I hope that this hot potato will not wait for us, one of us, when we'll be elected. But I hope that the SACA process will be implemented. It is about the personnel, the staff. We have moved from a lot of short contract employees to a permanent contract. That's very important. If you want to create loyalty, you want to create the ownership within your staff and personnel, you have to make them happy. They need to have a permanent contract, and it is in the SACA program. Now, the biggest bottleneck of the reforms is the financing. Our heads of state said we will pay 0.2% of eligible import to the Commission. Only 17 countries, 17, are applying and abiding by that rule. It has to change. I'm not going to impose that on our leaders. It's not my intention, but I will advocate for it. It's very important to have, that particular issue of mobilizing and fostering financing be resolved immediately. Then our experts, there is a unit in the African Union Commission called the Reform Unit, led by Mr. Makoko, a very able African expert. But there are so many reforms that have not been implemented. One of them is PAP, the Pan-African Parliament. It's still a consultative organ. When is the Pan-African Parliament will become a legislative organ? They have passed in 2014 a protocol. Only 15 countries ratified that protocol. And this is one of the major reforms that we have to implement. Then we have on the judicial sector, the Court of Justice, the Commission of Human Rights. Sometimes they are fighting on issues. The Court of Justice do not open its doors to nationals, to African citizens, to NGOs. They are complaining. I am hearing complaints about the African citizens with regard to the Court of Justice. And then they are fighting who is doing what, the Commission of Human Rights. These reforms have to be implemented. And the Bureau of Liaison, a liaison bureau. We have so many on the continent. That's double use of those bureaus. Time is running, time is flying. So we have to rationalize. How can you imagine that you have 3 bureaus in the same region? And we're saying we should have the golden rules for management. And whenever we want to touch one of the bureaus, it's a political matter. It's useless, but it's a political matter. The country that is hosting the bureau is saying, you won't touch it. It has to change. It needs leadership. At least understanding negotiation, but it has to change. If you want to change things, we have to be frank and outspoken. We have to be, really tough when it comes to be tough, and lean when it comes to, we have to do it. We have to do it.